Hello and welcome to episode 5 of 123, our video journal published by CFO Thought Leader. In this episode, 3 CFOs share firsthand accounts of confronting crises and the decisive responses that followed. First up, we have CFO Sarah Spoja of Tipalti. Sarah recounts the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, where amid major stakeholder discussions, she manages the adroit movement of funds and leverages strong partnerships to secure the balance sheet in real time. Next, Damon Fletcher, the former CFO of Tableau and current CEO of Caliper, reflects on some of the market turmoil that followed a dramatic valuation drop at Tableau back in 2016. This led to a business model overhaul, a period of rebuilding for investor trust, and finally, there was a return to renewed stability. Next up, CFO Jamey Mock of Moderna. Jamey reflects on the dire early days of COVID, emphasizing rigorous risk management and transparent employee communication as the keys to weathering uncertainty. This episode, 3 finance leaders transform crisis into opportunity. This is 123.
On March 8th of 2023, which for those of you who are CFOs, that was the Thursday, and SVB closed its doors on Friday morning and didn't let any more payments out. And so as I'm sitting in a room with major stakeholders in the debt community, JP Morgan to my right and Hercules Capital to my left, my treasurer and I were moving our funds out of SVB in real time in that meeting. And I'll just remember that experience as being, I cannot believe that this is where I'm sitting and I'm doing this activity while, the bank that, frankly was the pinnacle of banks for the tech community for so long was going through this experience, and none of us knew what was going to happen the next day. And so, it was obviously a very, to get through that debt raise under that, recency of the news and to sign the contracts just a few weeks later and get it completed, was a testament to the partnership, frankly, with those two parties that we had built over many months, that we had already gotten through all the tough conversations, all of the, difficult diligence, that we had built mutual trust, and respect with each other throughout that process. That's something as big as a global banking crisis that then brought down other banks with it would not have gotten in the way of us closing that transaction. And so, I'm really proud of what we built for Tipalti. For us, we actually raised a lot of money in 2021 and we haven't used the bulk of that money. And we won't need to do a primary raise, again at our current pace. And so this extra sort of capital was really just, the safety net, the rainy day funds. I don't know how you want to call it, but it was just the thing that really, for us, strengthened the balance sheet. So in this sort of uncertain macro environment, we could keep doing what we're doing and not worry about it. But certainly when we started that process in, December, January of the, prior, I certainly didn't think uncertain macro environment would include multiple bank failures. So it was quite an experience. I will always know where I was sitting when I, got the first wins that SVB was going to be in trouble. And, of course, I hope, like the rest of us in the tech space, that SVB comes back and sort of recovers from all of this and continues to be as helpful as they have been to tech companies for ages. But I think there's a very small sliver of the population that will think about where they were when they heard that SVB was collapsing, right? And maybe that's just the people I hang out with, unfortunately, which might tell you something about my friend group, I guess. But, I think it's a moment that a lot of folks in the finance space, whether it's, bankers, institutional investors, VCs, finance professionals will remember, particularly if they were in tech, because we all have a story of, a company that we were a part of, or that we were on the board of, or something where SVB really came to help them and really came to be, part of a positive part of their journey. And so I think for all of us, there's the first point is, okay, well, I need to protect my company, and to protect my company means I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to do X, Y, and Z as quickly as possible before cutoffs, before wire cutoffs. But then the back of our head is, I really hope this isn't going where it looks like it's going. And so I think that's sort of a shared, concern that we all had on that day. Now, as far as doing the round, it didn't change the answer for us to do the round. It certainly, I think, just anytime there's some disruption or uncertainty in markets, like people can get, cold feet. And so it was just a lot of checking in with everyone, making sure credit committees hadn't changed their mind, weren't just sort of stalling or anything like that, just because of the environment. And thankfully, again, I think, had we not built up the trust, respect, the kind of shared alignment and gotten through all of the, tougher diligence conversations, then maybe the results would have been different. But it was a great group we work with. I can't, commend the folks from JP Morgan and Hercules anymore.
Choose the places that you work in carefully. Work at organizations that have the best tools and the best people and the best processes, particularly early on in your career. Because then when you're a leader down the road 10 and 20 years later and you're trying to build things from scratch, or you're trying to take things from one level to another level, they're going to be looking for you. The CEO is going to be looking for the finance leader to say, what is best practice and how do you get there? And what does it look like? If you start off in a career that allows you to see some of that really best of class activity and behavior, it'll pay off for you, even if it's not the highest paying position you got early on in your career or the fanciest title. It'll pay off for you 10, 20 years down the road.
If you go back to 2014, 2013, when Tableau, had its IPO, we were competing against, some legacy tools, business objects, and things like that, MicroStrategy, Click, and we were obviously the leader and an emerging technology growing very rapidly. I think it's putting up 70% growth year over year in our first few quarters as a public company, hiring aggressively to try to capture market value. In 2016, Microsoft released Power BI, which a number of investors perceived as kind of almost like a copycat version of Tableau, and it was being bundled with the Microsoft products, and there was a lot of fear about could that impact our earnings. And I remember in 2016. We weren't necessarily seeing it being a big impact on our underlying business from how we were performing and how deals were flowing through our pipeline. But I remember there was I can't remember the exact details, but somehow we lowered our or didn't raise our guidance as much as the market expected. And because we were such a high flyer, LinkedIn and us on the same day had a dramatic decrease in valuation. So I think Tableau was down about 50%. And I think that really created a lot of introspection at the company. I think Christian, our CEO at the time, came up with like 8 or 9 key priorities for the company to get us back on track. And there was a couple of those that I personally helped with, which is one was moving our customers from perpetual to subscription, because we felt like that would be a better business model long term for predictability of earnings. And when you have a company that if you're buying up front and you own the product, it's very different than if you pay every year, even though it's a smaller fee, because it's more predictable. And so we started that process after that quarter of moving our business to subscription. I took over investor relations, and so kind of rebuilding investor trust was one of those. And so we spent a lot of time on the road that summer and really tried to educate a new group of investors who were more long-term oriented holders to kind of buy into the stock. And we hired a head of investor relations, Derek Wong, who helped with that and did an unbelievable job for us, kind of targeting long-term investors. And then the third thing was we moved, we had planned to hire like 1,000 people that year. We scaled back the hiring plan and then dramatically changed our real estate footprint. And so I was responsible for kind of handling that transition where we subleased a lot of our properties to Google and really moved all our employees into kind of 2 beautiful new buildings. It became a lot more efficient from a real estate perspective. So that was like a multifaceted way of really addressing kind of a market decline. And then if you follow the company from 16 through the sale to Salesforce, it was really up and to the right. There wasn't a lot of volatility in the stock after that point, as there had been in the previous period. So I'm really proud of what the team accomplished. And I think that was kind of a huge undertaking to kind of, because that was a pretty scary moment for the rank and file employee who saw, half their long-term savings decline based off the share price.
So we're already started to use AI to support the forecasting process. For us, anticipating market trends in terms of the industry, the cars that are going to be produced, adoption rate for the systems are really critical for our forecasting in the next year, 2, 3, or 5 years. And since there's a lot of data and a lot of input, so taking and of course we have different OEMs, so you also want to know where these cars are going to be produced, by which OEM, in which territory. So there's tremendous data on these things. So really combining a few resources or data from different places and analyzing it and seeing which result you get. We find it efficient, and also to look at past periods.
Yeah, great question. The financial, I think when the times are truly dire, there's risks every day, but when it's really concerning, I'll actually go back to when COVID first hit. And when COVID first hit and I was the CFO of PerkinElmer, I didn't know what was going to happen. There was a chance revenue was going to be down 50+%. And so that's when you need to truly understand risk and communicate like hell. And so we were studying, okay, give me every scenario, every dollar cost. What can we affect? What's our cash flow? What's going to happen here? And really get my arms around that first. Second, when it's truly a dire time, while we have a lot of different stakeholders, it really, to me, it becomes employees first. That is what I thought you had to talk to employees, make sure they understood where we stand, what we're going to do, how they can help, because that's really when, you're really concerned, right? And investors matter, of course, and customers matter, but your employees at that moment, if you're nervous, they're super nervous. And you got to make sure you talk to them even more. I'm talking about when it's a really dire time. Turns out PerkinElmer ended up being okay because they developed a COVID test and had plenty of revenue. But at that moment, I think manage risk, understand it, and communicate to your employees. One is capital allocation by David Giroux, who is the Chief Investment Officer of T. Rowe and was a shareholder of PerkinElmer, and I learned a great deal from. And getting back to this whole theme of capital allocation and driving value creation, he really distills what are your options and what are your choices and why are they good or bad. And it was a fantastic book that I read and really has helped shape my thinking around capital allocation. And then the second that I like to recommend is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And really because it's relentlessness and risk-taking. And I think finance people, myself included, it is easy to say no, but that's not going to build a company. You have to find a way to take risks. No company is going to grow without taking risks. And he sure took a lot of risks. So, we have to take smart risks. But I think that's important for finance individuals to understand, what are you looking at? What are the metrics? How do I take risk? The answer is, it's too easy to say no. How do I get to yes and take the appropriate risks? And so those are the two I'd recommend.
We are growing a lot on the younger base of the customer, below the 40 years old, and their expectations are changing. We are selling, of course, not products, but experiences. We always think about that. Selling experiences means that we have to create all the opportunities to give our customers the sense of being in the Lamborghini community, even when they are not driving our cars. In example, participating in events, or having, in example, wearing a watch produced by our partner. We have partnership in adjacent segments to give, again, our customers the way to live the Lamborghini world, even when they are not driving the car.
Thank you for watching this episode of 123. We hope the stories from Sarah Spoja, Damon Fletcher, and Jamey Mock inspire you with fresh insights on confronting crises head on. Remember, every crisis presents a chance to innovate and grow. Stay resilient, stay strategic, and we'll see you next time.